Discover the incredible moment my son revealed. He no longer considered us family on Christmas Day. Mark stood in the dim light of the kitchen, a stark contrast to the vibrant Christmas decorations that adorned the living room. The festive colors, sparkling ornaments, and a freshly cut pine tree seemed so inviting, yet the stark reality of his life loomed heavy in the air. As a mechanic in a small Ohio town, Mark had spent countless hours under hoods and wrenches, all to give his 16-year-old son, Ethan, a stable life. But stability had come at the cost. The emotional distance between them grew each year like an unkempt garden, and Mark could feel the weeds choking their bond. Ethan entered the kitchen, rolling his eyes at yet another batch of cookies in the oven. "Really, Dad? Christmas cookies? We could just buy some." Mark hesitated, battling a wave of frustration. He longed to bake with his son like they did when Ethan was younger, laughter mixed with flour and sugar, but it had become a burden of embarrassment for Ethan, who seemed to be slipping further away. The rejection felt like ice water drenching a fire, smothering the spark of hope he had tried to ignite as they decorated the tree. Mark tucked his feelings away, focusing instead on the colorful lights. Each ornament held a memory, a reminder of joy. But as the last ornament hung precariously on a branch, Mark sensed something brewing beneath the surface, the air thickening with tension. His mind raced, a cacophony of doubt and anxiety. Was he doing enough? Was he ignoring his son's needs while trying to provide materially? Every holiday card he'd ever sent echoed in his thoughts. "Merry Christmas from our perfect little family." Perfect. The ache of his partner's absence haunted him. Before he could fully process his insecurities, the table was set for their Christmas feast, an illusion of togetherness. As they gathered around, the smell of baked ham filled the air. "Dad, can I tell you something?" Ethan's voice broke through the silence like glass shattering on tile. Mark nodded, trying to appear encouraging, though his insides twisted with dread. "I don't see us as a family anymore. I can't pretend, okay?" For a moment time froze. The warm glow of Christmas lights became blinding, and a cold wave washed over Mark. His mouth went dry, heart racing. How could Ethan say that? The room pounded with unspoken words. Had all his hard work, long hours in the garage, and sacrifices meant nothing? Mark felt crushed under the weight of Ethan's words, raw and painful, the ideals of loyalty and unity slipping through his fingers. "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue." Mark's pulse quickened as doubts cascaded through him. Had he truly failed in his role as a father? Days, weeks, years spent under the hood had created a financial fortress. Yet had he constructed an emotional prison? Ethan, once so bright and innocent, now stood as a stranger, a symbol of everything that had gone wrong. The warmth of the holiday faded as Mark grappled with resentment and loss. With the tension crackling between them like the static before a storm, Mark felt the urgency of their moment. How could he redirect this trajectory? It was clear something had to shift. Yet the anticipation hung thick with fear. Could he muster the strength to confront his own past, while still trying to hold his son close? In that cold, fractured moment, hope felt like a fragile ornament on the tree, teetering, ready to fall. The air hung heavy with unspoken words, each tick of the clock amplifying the tension in the room. Mark clenched his fists under the table, his knuckles turning white as he fought against the wave of emotions crashing over him. "Ethan," he finally breathed, struggling to find the right words. "What do you mean? You're still my son. We've always been a family." His voice wavered, the facade of confidence beginning to crumble. Ethan looked away, the bitterness palpable in his silence. Mark could see the boy wrestling with his feelings, a storm brewing in his darkening eyes. This was not just about him. Was it possible that Ethan saw a world rejecting him, one that he felt completely at odds with? Mark felt a different kind of shame wash over him, not the shame of failure but the shame of realization. He had spent so long knowing the mechanics of cars, yet had neglected to understand the mechanics of his son's heart. He needed to act not just in response to Ethan's words, but also in a way that showed he was willing to change. Give me a chance to understand, please, Mark said, the desperation spilling into his tone. What makes you feel this way? How did we get here? Ethan finally met his father's gaze, the vulnerability sparking a flicker of hope in Mark's chest. You're always at work, Dad. You're never around. All those hours spent fixing cars, I just wanted you to fix us. I wanted to feel like I wasn't alone. The word struck Mark like a wrench to the gut. Here was his son, a boy who had become a stranger, and all this time, he thought that material stability would heal emotional wounds. The realization that his misplaced priorities had alienated Ethan was hard to digest. I can change that, Mark stammered. What if we did something together? Just us work on the old truck in the garage? I know you used to love that. Ethan shrugged, a flicker of interest flashing across his face but quickly buried under layers of teenage apathy. That was a long time ago. And you'll just get frustrated when things don't work out. Then let us face those frustrations together. Mark pressed, feeling a burgeoning resolve inside him. Look, I'm learning just as much as you are. In the garage, I get it wrong more times than I care to admit. Ethan coughed out a laugh, the sound shaky but warm. You a mechanic? No way. That's the joke, right? Mark chuckled softly. But sometimes the mess is what teaches you the most. I want to pretend everything will be perfect, but I promise I'll try. I'm here, Ethan. A silence enveloped them, the kind that felt heavy yet filled with possibility. In Mark's heart, a stubborn ember ignited a spark of determination to be the father Ethan needed. But just as hope began to bloom, the uncertainty loomed. What if Ethan didn't want that anymore? Would he ever let Mark in again? The billowing questions echoed like tires screeching against pavement. How deep was the rift? How far would it take to mend it? As Mark searched his son's face for an answer, the words seemed to hang between them like a fragile bridge, ready to break. Tomorrow let us start fresh, Mark offered, trying to coax a smile from Ethan's guarded expression. Just give me one more chance. Ethan's hesitation lingered, a battle of emotions etched across his brow, and Mark realized that the tomorrow he sought was not just about fixing the present but about building something new from the wreckage of their past. As he stepped away from the table, the weight of the moment lingered, and he understood that his journey was only beginning. He felt the ticking clock overhead. Not a countdown but an invitation to confront the deeper truths of their relationship. Tomorrow would mark a shift. But what would it take for Ethan to trust him again? As dawn broke the following day, Mark awoke to an unsettling mix of hope and anxiety. The light streaming through the window felt simultaneously like a soft embrace, and a reminder of the uncertain path ahead. Steeling himself for the day, he mentally cycled through his plans. Today was crucial. Beyond the mechanics of fixing a truck, he needed to repair the frayed edges of their bond. The garage, filled with tools and memories, loomed before him like a battleground waiting for a fight. It held echoes of laughter and the remnants of failed projects. Remnants of a time when Ethan used to look up at him with eager eyes, willing to experiment and create. Now the space felt heavy with the weight of unfulfilled promises and missed connections. Mark grabbed a rusty wrench and began cleaning. The familiar motions calmed his racing heart, but as he worked, his mind raced with thoughts of Ethan. How could he connect with the boy who felt abandoned, yet remained hidden behind layers of defiance? Was this renovation of the truck just another impossibility? Another reminder of their fractured relationship? Ethan arrived a bit later, his presence like a sudden gust of wind through the open garage door. He hesitated, assessing the space as if it were foreign ground. Mark forced himself to maintain a casual demeanor, choosing to focus on the truck's hood rather than the awkward silence. Hey, Mark said, breaking the ice with a lightness he didn't feel. I figured we could start with the engine. Ethan shifted, clearly skeptical. Isn't that where everything usually goes wrong? Mark forced a smile, hoping humor might bridge the gap. Exactly. But it's also where we can learn. What do you say we take a look together? With every moment, Mark was aware of the fragile stakes they faced. Ethan's eyes flickered over the mechanical chaos, weighing his interest against the tangled history between them. Finally, with a reluctant nod, he stepped forward. Mark's heart leapt a small victory. As they lifted the hood, the smell of oil and the mix of rust and metal enveloped them, grounding them in the present. Mark pointed to the engine block. This is where we need to focus first. If we don't get this right, nothing else will work. For the next couple of hours they dissected the puzzle of the engine. The conversation flowed, sometimes punctuated by the clanking of tools, but Mark could sense the walls around Ethan slowly crumbling. Their dialogue teetered between mechanics and personal musings, revealing pieces of laughter mixed with shared frustration. Yet beneath the surface, Mark grappled with his anxiety. Each crowded silence could signal a retreat into the shadows, another wall reinforced. A surge of determination strengthened his resolve. He couldn't allow this moment of connection to slip away. Ethan, I want you to know that I'm not just here to fix the truck, Mark began gently. I'm here for us. I need you to understand that I realize I've messed up. I let work come between us, and that was my mistake. Ethan paused, his hands frozen mid-motion. The heaviness in the air morphed, the tension thickening as the boy contemplated his father's admission. Mark felt a tremor of anxiety. Was he being too vulnerable? Was he risking too much? I know that's what you say, but words don't mean much if there's no action to back them up, Ethan replied, his voice low yet steady. Mark met his son's gaze, understanding the truth beneath the surface. Ethan's walls were rooted in a deep-seated fear of disappointment. You're right, he acknowledged. So let us make a pact. We keep working on this truck, no matter how frustrating it gets. Maybe it'll help us repair more than just a machine. Ethan looked at Mark, the shift in his demeanor palpable. The clock's ticking transformed from a reminder of pressure to a propelling force of possibility. Okay, Ethan finally replied, his voice tinged with a cautious optimism. But don't expect me to be great at this. Mark laughed, the sound echoing against the garage walls, filled with the warmth of shared vulnerability. Neither am I. But that's the beauty of it, together we can learn. As they resumed their work, a flicker of hope ignited in Mark's chest, propelling him toward the prospect of rebuilding their connection. But as they dove back into the task, he couldn't shake the feeling that the next hurdle loomed on the horizon. What if deeper issues lay beneath the surface waiting to be unearthed? Issues that threatened to destabilize their newfound momentum. Only time would tell if this was a turning point or merely a diversion on a much longer road. As the days unfolded, each hour spent in the garage morphed from a mechanical endeavor into something deeper, an intricate dance of vulnerability and tentative trust. The truck was slowly transforming, and so, it seemed, was their relationship. But with every bolt tightened and every part replaced, Mark felt an underlying tension brewing in Ethan. They had established a routine, mornings filled with greasy hands and laughter spilled between moments of silence. Yet, each time Mark brushed against a serious topic, Ethan would retreat like a turtle into its shell. It felt like a tightrope walk, every step forward showing potential but accompanied by the constant threat of falling into the depths of uncertainty. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange glow inside the garage, Mark sensed this might be a pivotal moment. They had made significant progress on the truck that week, yet Ethan's earlier energy had waned. The usual banter had been replaced by a reticence that gnawed at Mark's stomach. He decided he could no longer delay confronting these shadows. Hey, Ethan, he began cautiously, wiping his hands on a rag. We've done a lot of good work here, but I feel like something's still off with us. Ethan glanced up, his eyes clouded. What do you mean? Mark hesitated, searching for the right words. I want to know how you truly feel about all of this, about me, about us. I want to understand what's going on in that head of yours. Ethan's jaw tightened, and Mark could see he was treading on thin ice. The silence stretched between them like a chasm, each second amplifying the dread building in Mark's chest. Would Ethan shrink from this moment, slinking back into the shadows, or would he confront it with a voice of his own? I don't know, Dad, he finally muttered, studying the greasy floor rather than meeting Mark's eyes. It's hard. Things change. Mark felt a surge of familiarity swell. Here it was, the childhood excuse that had long echoed in his head, often ignored and underestimated. Change doesn't have to be bad. I'm here, right? I want to work on it with you. Right. But it's not just the truck or repairing things between us. You're around now, but what happens when you leave again? Ethan's voice hardened, creating a wall that Mark sensed would be difficult to breach. I don't want to go back to that, Mark confessed, each word heavy with sincerity. I know I messed up. It's about proving it every day, not just once or twice. Proving it? Ethan's tone dripped with skepticism. Do you even know what that means? I mean, what if I tell you it doesn't matter? What if I say it's too late? Mark felt punched in the gut. You can't really believe that, he replied quietly. I mean, if you truly feel that way, it's not just a feeling. It's the truth, Ethan snapped, the anger bubbling up like steam from a boiling pot. You're not here. You weren't there when everything went wrong. I didn't just lose my dad. I lost my family. Each spoken word struck a chord within Mark. He had known it could come to this. Confrontation meant vulnerability. I don't know how else to say it. I want to fix this, Ethan. I messed up, but I'm here now. Are you? Or are you just here for the truck? Ethan challenged, his gaze finally meeting Mark's, revealing the hurt that lay festering beneath a hardened exterior. Mark felt the weight of that question. The implications rolled over him like a wave. What if the work on the truck was just a facade for deeper issues yet to be addressed? Mark began but faltered, grappling with his own emotions. He wanted to fight for them, to fight for this relationship, but the struggle felt insurmountable at that moment. The air thickened with a blend of frustration and the lingering possibility of hope. A surge of determination ignited inside him. They couldn't stop here. I guess we keep working on it then, he offered, trying to mask the uncertainty that tumbled through him. Working on what? Ethan asked, eyebrows drawn together in frustration. Working on us, Mark answered, as composed as he could manage. But it has to be genuine, Ethan. If we're going to fix this, we have to peel back more layers than just a truck. Ethan shifted uncomfortably, searching for words. Mark could see the conflict in his expressions, and it was only the beginning. I don't know if I can do that, Ethan finally said. His voice quieter now but no less resolute. I believe you can, Mark replied softly, taking a step closer, despite the distance that felt palpable between them. But in that moment of connection, Mark sensed the weight of further revelations yet to come. What might Ethan reveal next? And would they be ready to confront those truths head-on? The next morning, Mark awoke earlier than usual, a restless energy coursing through him. As sunlight streamed through the garage windows, illuminating the heaps of tools and the partially restored truck, he knew today had to be different. Yesterday's conversation echoed in his mind. Ethan's words hung in the air like a challenge, daring him to face the truth, whatever that truth might be. He moved through the space, the familiar smell of motor oil and grease mixing with the fresh morning air. This was his sanctuary now, an arena where he hoped to rebuild not only a truck, but the very foundation of a fractured relationship. Mark picked up a wrench, letting its weight settle in his palm. He knew actions spoke louder than promises. He had to show Ethan that commitment extended beyond mere words. Ethan trudged in a little later, still clad in his pajamas, and plopped into a stool at the workbench, looking far more disheveled than the meticulous teenage veneer he often presented. Morning, he muttered, avoiding eye contact. Hey there, Mark replied, trying to inject enthusiasm into his tone. Let us dive into it today. What do you want to start with? Ethan shrugged, fiddling with a piece of metal on the workbench. The silence that ensued felt heavy, filled with unspoken grievances and fears. Mark realized that he had to address the emotional rift head-on, while navigating the maintenance of the truck. Look, Ethan, he started, carefully choosing his next words, I know yesterday was hard. The truth is, I'm not just here for the truck. I'm here because I want my son back. I've got no idea what it'll take, but we need to work together. Ethan finally met his gaze, scrutinizing his father's expression, searching for signs of authenticity. What if I told you it's really not up to you anymore? He challenged, the edge of defiance creeping into his tone. Then I'd say that maybe you don't understand how much I want to try, Mark shot back, feeling a spark of frustration himself. You think this is easy for me? I'm scared too. I'm scared of losing you again. Losing me? Ethan seemed caught off guard. I already feel lost. You don't get it. Mark took a breath, trying to ground himself. Then help me understand. Tell me how this feels from your side. I promise I'll listen. Ethan shifted, his defiance faltering. Life was fine before. I was fine, just me and Mom. You weren't there. Things changed, Mark acknowledged, the weight of guilt creeping into his voice. And I have to live with that. But I want to be here now for whatever happens next. Ethan hesitated, something akin to vulnerability flickering behind his anger. People don't forgive and forget, Dad, he finally said, voice trembling slightly. You don't just show up when it's convenient. Mark sensed a slight crack forming in Ethan's hard exterior. I wouldn't dream of treating you like that again, no more half measures. I'm ready to make my actions speak louder day by day, little by little, even if it's just here in this garage. He picked up another tool and handed it to Ethan, a tangible symbol of partnership. Let us take on this truck together, and maybe in the process we can take on our own challenges. For a fleeting moment, Mark saw uncertainty and flickering hope dance across Ethan's face as he accepted the tool. But before long, that hope morphed back into distrust. I don't know if I can trust you yet. You just disappeared. Disappointment flooded Mark's chest. I know, and I'm sorry, but can we agree to uncover our truths together, one layer at a time? I can't promise a perfect parent or an ideal situation, but I can promise to put in the effort to show you I'm committed. Can you give me that chance? Ethan looked torn, his face a mask of conflict as he processed Mark's proposition. Just when a hesitant okay seemed to bubble to the surface, he closed himself off again. I'll think about it, he muttered, standing abruptly and disappearing back into the shadows of the garage. Mark's heart sank, yet he felt a glimmer of truth amidst the discouragement. This was a step forward, however small, toward rebuilding their relationship. But just as quick as that thought emerged, uncertainty crept back in, heavy and lingering. What would it take to turn that promise into reality? As the silence enveloped the garage, an insatiable tension hung in the air, both of them waiting for the moment that would decide their fates. Little did Mark know a revelation was looming, one that could either fracture their fragile dynamic or unite them in an unexpected way. What would it reveal about Ethan's deep-seated fears and ultimately, about their unshakable bond? Mark stood alone in the garage, his heart lingering in a state of uncertainty. As the sun rose higher, its rays cast long shadows across the room that mirrored his thoughts. Each shadow seemed to represent the gaps that had formed over the years, gaps of absence, misunderstanding, and disappointment. He clenched the wrench tighter, his knuckles whitening as he wrestled with the weight of his newfound commitment. Just then, his phone buzzed, breaking his reverie. It was a message from an old colleague, inviting him to an automotive workshop. As he read the details, something shifted in him. Just a few weeks ago, he would have dismissed such an invitation, preferring to bury himself in his self-imposed duties. But now, with Ethan's return heavy on his mind, he recognized the importance of not only working on the truck but also on himself. What better way to reflect his willingness to change than to enrich his own skills? Mark swiftly typed a response, confirming his attendance. It felt good to feel proactive, to take a step towards professional growth, which he hoped would also reverberate positively into his personal life. He envisioned returning from the workshop not just with new tools but with a new perspective, a revised toolkit for both fatherhood and craftsmanship. He glanced at the unfinished truck, its bodywork waiting. Each dent and scratch seemed to reflect his own failures. Yet he imagined how demonstrating resilience in restoring that vehicle could become a mutual journey. Perhaps if he could challenge himself to develop further, he could inspire Ethan to see him as more than a distant figure. With determination, Mark spent the morning preparing for the workshop. He organized tools, researched effective techniques online, and even practiced a few maneuvers that could make his time more productive. It felt invigorating to immerse himself in learning, and a small voice inside of him ignited this was a transformation, a signal to Ethan that he was taking their relationship seriously. When the time came to leave, he felt an unexpected thrill. Arriving at the workshop, he found an enthusiastic group of fellow attendees, each eager to enhance their skills. Mark's nervousness was quickly overshadowed by a spirit of camaraderie. They shared stories about their own journeys, some spoke about bonds with family, and others about personal redemption through their craft. Listening to them reminded him that he wasn't alone in his struggle. As they delved into hands-on demonstrations, Mark felt invigorated. The mechanics, tips, and techniques were simply tools, but they became symbolic of the rebuilding he was intent on doing, not just with the truck, but with his relationship with Ethan. The instructor shared an insightful perspective on how the process of restoration mirrored life itself, underscoring that imperfections are integral in shaping resilience and growth. Returning home later that day, Mark's mind was racing. He felt the tangible excitement of newfound knowledge coupled with a reinvigorated commitment. Upon entering the garage, he discovered Ethan back there, head bent over his phone, lost in a world of his own. "Hey Ethan," Mark said, voice steady but tinged with anticipation. "I just came back from a workshop. It was incredible. Their essay lot I learned that I think can help with the truck and with us. He stepped closer, ready to share. Ethan glanced up, brow furrowing. You still think fixing a truck can fix everything? He asked, sarcasm staining his words. Not everything, Mark replied, a sense of urgency rising within him. But it's a start. I want you to know that I'm serious about showing up for the truck, and for our relationship. Can you give me another chance to show you what I've learned? The room thickened with palpable tension as Ethan scrutinized him, uncertainty lurking behind his hesitant demeanor. Mark hoped this moment would break through the wall that had stood between them for too long. But instead, Ethan sighed, casting his gaze back to the ground as if searching for a lost truth. I don't know, Dad. It's not just about learning how to fix things. Mark swallowed hard, and a new layer of doubt unfurled. What is it about, then? What do I need to prove to you? Ethan's silence pierced the air. And in that fraught moment, Mark realized he stood on the precipice of a deeper revelation. Would tonight be the moment they began to truly redefine their bond, or would it plunge them into further misunderstanding? As the shadows danced to the lengthening evening light, Mark braced himself, aware that the discussion at hand could change everything. Would Ethan reveal the truth that lay buried beneath layers of hurt and disappointment? Mark's heart thudded in his chest as silence enveloped the garage, thickening the air as if it were saturating with unspoken words. He fought the urge to look away, grounding himself in the moment like the tires he had recently studied, strong and stable yet vulnerable to the pressures around them. Ethan, he began, his voice trembling slightly. I'm trying to understand. If fixing things isn't enough, what else do I need to do? The raw honesty in his tone startled him, almost as if the words had escaped, revealing a part of himself he kept locked away. Ethan shifted, the skepticism in his expression unabated. It's not always about fixing. Sometimes it's about just being there, you know? You were never around when I needed you, Dad. You think a few skills can change that? Mark's chest tightened. Those words hit harder than any wrench could. I know I've been distant. You have to believe me when I say I want to change that. His throat felt dry, the weight of regret flooding his thoughts. He had focused so much on the tangible aspects of life, the truck, work, believing that those would bridge the divide between them. Now he realized they were merely disguises, covering the deeper emotional void that had been festering. As he scrunched his fingers around the wrench, he made a decision. Let us do something together. Something that's real. Let us work on the truck but also talk. I don't want to just patch things up. I want to understand you. Ethan's gaze softened momentarily before he shrugged. You think doing something is really going to help? What if I've already given up trying? Mark felt a pang of defeat. I won't let you give up. Not on this. Not on us. His determination flared up, and he caught sight of the young man. His son was becoming intelligent and emotionally articulate, yet guarded and wary of previous disappointments. What if we take this slow? Mark offered, feeling a pulse of hope as he envisioned a new pathway for them. We can start with small projects. I'll listen. Promise. Show me what you want to do. Ethan hesitated, weighing his father's words as if they were fragile objects. Mark could see doubt still linger, a reflection of years spent feeling unheard. But there was also a spark of curiosity. Perhaps Mark had finally tapped into something meaningful. Fine. But it's going to take more than just some tools and talks. You get that, right? It's about showing up consistently. Absolutely. I'll be here. Whatever it takes, Mark replied, relief washing over him. They had crossed an important threshold. But he also knew that just one open conversation wouldn't redefine their relationship overnight. As they stood side by side, he reached for a set of tools, extending them toward Ethan. Let us get started. Together. Ethan took the tools apprehensively, his fingers brushing against Mark's as their eyes met. In that charged moment, a flicker of understanding passed between them, however fragile. But before Mark could feel a sense of victory, Ethan spoke again, voice heavy. Just don't expect me to forget everything that happened. Mark's heart sank, bracing itself for the weight of further revelations. Everything rested on this new venture. As they began the work, the functional mechanics offered respite for deeper emotional repair. But that would require time and patience, the very things Mark often struggled to balance. What lay ahead could lead them to uncharted territories of pain and healing. He glanced over at Ethan, who was now focused on the task at hand. A thin line of concentration furrowed on his brow. Mark was reminded that this journey would require more than just individual skills. It demanded unity. He reached out, nudging Ethan gently. Let us take it step by step, and if you need to talk about how you feel, I'm ready to listen, no judgment. Ethan paused, the possibility of a deeper connection lingering in the air. Mark held his breath, acutely aware of the potential pitfalls of this new openness. Would Ethan share what truly lay heavy on his heart? Or would they remain trapped in a cycle of unease? And as their effort began to shift from mere labor to shared moments, Mark felt something lift within him, a recognition that even the most difficult discussions could guide them toward reconciliation. Outside, the shadows of the garage lengthened, absorbing the day's fading light. Mark couldn't help but wonder. What would happen when the conversation turned toward those buried feelings? The hard truths Ethan had yet to reveal. The following hours passed under the hum of machinery and the unsteady rhythm of tools colliding with metal. With each turn of the wrench, Mark felt an urge to dive deeper into the chasm that had formed between him and Ethan. The truck was a physical manifestation of their effort. He could feel the tension slowly beginning to lift as they worked side by side, orchestrating a dance of mechanical precision. Yet, in the quiet moments of their labor, thoughts swirled in Mark's mind, lighting up memories both cherished and painful. He began to realize that the challenge before him wasn't just the truck, but the mountain of silence and resentment he had allowed to build in their relationship. Ethan was concentrated, absorbed in the task, yet Mark couldn't shake the feeling that the real repair work lay beneath the surface. After a while he asked, "So, what do you enjoy doing outside of work? Have you picked up any new hobbies?" Ethan's focus did not waver. "Not really," he replied bluntly, tightening a bolt with more force than necessary. "Too busy for that. You know how life is." Mark flinched, recognizing the layers of abandonment hidden in those few words. But he pressed on, "You should find time for yourself. You're good at things, Ethan. I want to hear what you love, what makes you tick." Ethan stopped and looked up, the intensity in his gaze surprising Mark. "Why does it matter? You've never really cared about my interests, Dad." The accusation hung heavy in the air. Mark felt a tightening in his chest, the familiar sensation of vulnerability creeping back in. "That's not true. I was just focused on trying to provide, trying to keep everything together. I thought that was what you needed." Ethan snickered, a bitter laugh that cut through Mark like a sharp edge. "But you weren't there when I needed you to be there. You fixed cars and ignored the kid who was right in front of you." Stung, Mark recognized that this wasn't just a conversation about hobbies or interests. It was the long-awaited confrontation of their relationship. He clenched his jaw, the urge to defend himself surging. "What do you want from me? I can't change the past, Ethan." Ethan's expression shifted, his irritation giving way to something softer, a hint of vulnerability. "Then maybe you can change how you are now. Maybe that's enough. But I'm not ready to forgive yet." Mark sat back, the air thickening with the weight of unhealed wounds. "I understand. I want to work on this, but know that I'm serious about this change. I want you to see me as someone you can trust." Unprepared for Ethan's response, Mark barely moved when Ethan dropped his gaze, the uncharacteristic heaviness flooding his frame. "It's not that easy. Trust isn't built on a few conversations. It's years of reliability. You can't expect me to just flip a switch." The absoluteness of Ethan's words pressed down on him. Mark took a deep breath and reminded himself. "Healing takes time. I'm not expecting you to flip a switch, and I realize this won't happen overnight. I just want to be here doing the work together. It matters to me." For a moment it seemed like Ethan might say more, the barriers momentarily vibrating with the promise of dialogue. However, the walls quickly solidified again, a thick mist of silence swallowing the depth of their connection. Mark understood that this moment was merely a stepping stone. They were plodding their way through a web of emotions. He had to figure out how to navigate their shifting relationship without losing sight of the person he was trying to be. As evening began to cloak the garage in shadows, Mark's resolve deepened. He realized that fostering a relationship with Ethan meant learning how to express himself more openly while encouraging his son to do the same. There was so much left to unearth, so many truths yet to be faced. Would the next project reveal more than just metal and screws? Would it pry open the layers of their collective past? As Mark wiped the sweat from his brow, his mind flickered with concern and determination. What other truths did Ethan guard? And how would unveiling them reshape their connection? The necessity of unwavering patience loomed large as he prepared for the next rung on their challenging journey. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the garage filled with an eerie calm, the once vibrant backdrop of clattering tools giving way to silence punctuated only by the whirring of a distant fan. Mark leaned against the workbench, trying to reconcile the emotional fallout swirling in his mind. He couldn't shake the feeling that something essential had shifted, not just between him and Ethan but within himself as well. What was it about that moment? The raw exchange filled with ire, but adorned with more vulnerability than he had ever experienced, afforded him a bittersweet realization. Perhaps the mechanical world he immersed himself in wasn't enough. Perhaps he needed to immerse himself in the emotional work now, too. With a deep breath, he turned to the tools scattered on the bench, each holding stories of labor and passion but also remnants of absence. He picked up a rusted wrench, running his fingers over the pitted surface, contemplating how much he had relied on these tools to build a life, all while neglecting to build a relationship with his own son. Maybe it's time to change gears, he murmured, almost as a prayer to the universe. He turned to Ethan, feeling the magnetic pull of their unresolved tension. He knew that fostering a new connection meant taking risks, being willing to expose himself in ways that felt foreign and overwhelmingly daunting. Ethan, can we start something different? Somewhere outside of fixing this truck? Ethan's eyes flickered with curiosity, piercing through the thick fog of resentment. He looked at his father, then back at the truck, visibly wrestling with the internal conflict of wanting to hope while being scared of disappointment. Mark swallowed hard, racing against the clock of fleeting moments. I get that I haven't been there for you in the way you needed. I don't want to keep skirting around what's true between us. If I'm going to make a change, I need you to join me in that. Together. Please. Silence hung like a heavy cloud between them. Ethan's posture shifted slightly as Mark watched a battle play out, the tension in the boy's shoulders suggesting he was both aware of the depths of their problems and longing for resolution. I don't know if I can just forget the past, Ethan finally replied, his voice low but firm. You can't just wave a magic wand and say we're suddenly good. Not forgetting but learning, Mark replied, his voice steadying. Learning to move forward. I can't promise I'll have all the answers or even do it perfectly, but I can promise you I'll show up day after day. For the first time Ethan hesitated, uncertainty marring his features. What if I let you in, Dad? What if you just mess it up again? That leaves me even more broken. The fear in Ethan's voice struck Mark deeply, a piercing reminder of the reality his son had lived. He felt a wave of determination wash over him, eclipsing his own discomfort. Then I'll be there to pick up the pieces. I want you to see that I'm serious about this. Mark let those words linger, stepping back as he examined the palpable weight of what had been said. As Ethan processed the offer, Mark formulated a plan in his mind. He would introduce moments of joy into their routine, establish new rituals to forge fresh paths forward. Just then a thought struck him. What if the next stage of their journey involved sharing more than just mechanical tasks? What if they could take on a project together, something significant that challenged them both? How about we take on restoring another car? Something that resonates with you, something that speaks to you? Ethan lifted his gaze, surprise breaking through his hardened expression. What do you mean? I want us to find something that ignites passion, something you'd want to work on beyond just fixing what's broken. Mark felt a knot of hope tighten in his chest. We could build it together. Something we could both be proud of. For the first time Mark caught a glimmer of intrigue in his son's eyes. This could be the beginning of a new shared narrative, one where they were not defined by their past, but sculpted by their dreams for the future. But as he searched Ethan's face for confirmation, he realized he had one more challenge waiting to be unearthed. Would Ethan be willing to engage with this idea, or would the fear of yet another disappointment sap their momentum? The pressing question hung in the air, heavy with possibility. What lay ahead was the intricate dance of patience, acceptance, and rebuilding, a venture that might not only unlock the rusty gears of communication but change the shape of their bond for good. The sun cast a warm glow over the garage as Mark prepared for another day of work on the old truck. Ethan had agreed to join him in Olive Branch, perhaps, or even the first step toward reclaiming their fractured relationship. Mark took a moment to breathe, reflecting on the path that had led them to this point. He was no longer just a mechanic. He had become a father determined to rebuild something far more intricate than metal. He was intent on rejuvenating the bond with his son. Ethan arrived, still carrying the weight of uncertainty. Mark had grown accustomed to his son's mood swings, the oscillation between hope and fear evident in his expressions. But today something felt different. As they gathered tools, Mark could sense a tentative eagerness in Ethan's movements. It was small, but it was there, like the first crocus peeking through the snow. "Ready to dive in?" Mark asked, attempting to strike an encouraging tone while holding onto his own nerves. Ethan looked up, his guarded stance softening slightly. "I guess," he replied, a hint of a smile threatening to break through. It was a small victory, but for Mark it felt monumental. They started with the truck's engine, taking it apart systematically. It felt good to be lost in the rhythm of labor, each piece revealing itself like a secret waiting to be uncovered. Mark saw Ethan's engagement grow with every nut and bolt, and a familiar spark of curiosity began to shine in his son's eyes. It was a glimpse of the boy who once idolized him, and he wanted to nurture that spark into something more lasting. "Hey, what if we take this a step further? What about picking a color and painting the truck together afterwards?" Mark suggested, watching Ethan's face carefully for signs of interest. "Could be cool, I guess," Ethan responded. He showed no outright enthusiasm, but didn't he dismiss the idea either. Mark felt enlivened. After months of emotional turmoil, they were progressing in ways he once thought might never happen. As the day unfolded, they worked side by side, the garage filled with playful banter and laughter echoing against the walls. Each adjustment to the engine wasn't just a technical fix. It became a shared moment where walls were slowly being dismantled. Mark made a point to share not just his knowledge of mechanics, but also personal stories, triumphs and failures alike. "Did I ever tell you about the first car I worked on?" Mark began, wiping sweat from his brow. "It was a total disaster. Everything I touched broke." Ethan chuckled, and for that moment the tension dissipated. "Sounds like you, Dad. Bet you were embarrassed." "Humiliated," Mark laughed, "but I learned that failure is just part of the process. It gets you closer to success." Ethan considered his father's words, absorbing them. Mark recognized this wasn't merely a discussion about cars. It was about resilience and acceptance, the same lessons he longed to instill in Ethan. As the day came to a close, pieces of the old truck sat scattered across the workbench like their past, a kaleidoscope of moments, both bright and dark. Mark took a breath and turned to Ethan. "I want you to know how much I appreciate you being here. This means a lot." Ethan flicked his gaze sideways, chewing on his lower lip. "You're trying, huh?" Mark nodded, his heart racing. "I want to show you that I'm invested not just in the truck but in us. I know we've got a long way to go, but if we can fix this together, then we'll just keep working on it." Ethan finished, a far-off hope shimmering in his tone. "Exactly. And remember," Mark added, placing a gentle hand on his son's shoulder, "it's not about perfection. It's about effort and being there every day." Ethan's expression softened, revealing a glimpse of the trust Mark had yearned for. "Okay, I think I can do that. If you can keep showing up." "I promise," Mark affirmed, "one day at a time." As they stood there, the remnants of their conversation perched above the air like a newly suspended gear ready to turn. Mark felt a profound shift, a reclamation of sorts. He had emerged from his own emotional obscurity, sharing vulnerability in a way that laid a foundation for future progress. It wasn't just a truck they were rebuilding. It was their relationship, and with it, the opportunity to create something authentic, built from raw materials of honesty, patience, and unwavering support. Ethan threw an eager glance over his shoulder, pausing midway to the door. "Dad, mixing it up with the paint, what color do you think we should use?" Mark beamed. It was more than a question. It was a sign of his son re-engaging emotionally, of inviting his father into his world. "How about blue? A deep, confident blue?" "Yeah, I like that. It stands out," Ethan nodded. The decision felt significant. Each color layer would symbolize a moment, a shared experience. As Mark watched Ethan leave the garage, he felt a weight lift. Hope blossomed in the space where doubt had lingered. There was clarity now, a definitive turning point. They had begun to fix not just a truck but their connection, one intricate bolt at a time. Moving forward, Mark envisioned a future painted with more than just new colors on metal that together, they would continue carving their own definition of family, built anew with respect, love, and understanding. And it was finally time to embrace that journey together. Now, as you reflect on this emotional journey of overcoming, it's crucial you take action. You need to subscribe now to our channel. Do not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that help shape our lives. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, it makes a difference, and we appreciate your support. Comment below your reactions and theories about this ending. We want to engage with you. And don't wait even one more second. Share this video instantly with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion, because real transformation starts with conversations that matter.